Something just shifted in the hip-hop conversation, and people are not really sure what to make of it yet. Because out of nowhere, Charleston White is back in the spotlight, not because of random internet noise this time, but because Young Thug reportedly made a move that nobody saw coming. And the second that information hit the internet, everything started spinning fast. Now here's where it gets even more interesting. Akademiks jumps in almost instantly. And when Akademiks reacts, you already know the internet doesn't slow down, it accelerates. But pause for a second. Because this isn't just about one response or one reaction clip or one tweet being misread. This is turning into a three-way narrative collision, Charleston White on one side, Young Thug's camp in the middle, and Akademiks doing what he does best, amplifying every angle of it in real time. And the crazy part? Nobody seems to agree on what this outreach actually means. Was it peace? Was it pressure? Was it just misunderstood communication that the internet turned into a full storyline? That's where things get messy. Because once Charleston White responds, it never stays simple. His reactions always come with energy, opinions, and statements that instantly split the audience. Some people agree, some people completely reject it, but everyone watches. And then Akademiks adds fuel, breaking it down, reacting, questioning, sometimes even reshaping the entire conversation with just his interpretation. So now the internet is stuck in that familiar position again, trying to figure out what's real, what's reaction, and what's just entertainment being treated like breaking news. And by the time you reach the end of this breakdown, you're going to see how quickly one simple reach out moment turned into a full-blown online debate that nobody fully controls anymore. And this is where the situation really starts to take shape. Because once Charleston White enters the conversation, nothing stays quiet for long. His presence alone changes the tone of whatever is happening. It stops being just industry talk and turns into commentary that people either strongly agree with or strongly push back against. There's rarely any middle ground. Now add Young Thug into that equation, an artist whose name alone carries weight, influence, and constant public attention, and suddenly even a small interaction gets magnified into something much bigger online. And then you bring Akademiks into it, and you already know what happens next. Because Akademiks doesn't just report reactions, he amplifies the energy of them. He breaks things down in a way that makes the internet stop scrolling and start debating. Whether people agree with him or not, his coverage becomes part of the story itself. So when reports or claims started circulating that Young Thug had reached out to Charleston White, it immediately triggered curiosity across social media. Not because everything was clear, but because nothing was clear. And that confusion is exactly what fuels these viral cycles. One side of the internet starts asking, what does that even mean? Another side starts assuming intentions. Was it peace? Was it tension? Was it strategy? And before any real explanation even lands, the conversation has already evolved into 10 different interpretations. Charleston White, as always, becomes the center of attention because of how he responds to things. His reactions are rarely neutral. He speaks in a way that feels direct, unfiltered, and intentionally provocative to some viewers. That alone guarantees engagement every time his name enters a trending topic. But what's important to understand here is that in situations like this, the internet often confuses reaction with confirmation. Just because someone responds strongly doesn't mean the situation is fully understood. It just means the audience now has more content to interpret. And that's exactly what happens next. Akademiks reacts. And the moment that happens, the narrative expands again. Because now you don't just have an original situation, you have commentary on the situation. And commentary on commentary is where online narratives tend to become more chaotic than the original event itself. At this point, people aren't even sure what they're supposed to focus on anymore. Is it Young Thug's alleged outreach? Is it Charleston White's response? Or is it Akademiks breaking it down in real time? And the answer is, it becomes all of it at once. That's how modern internet storytelling works. A single moment doesn't stay single anymore. It gets layered, interpreted, clipped, reposted, and reinterpreted again until the original context becomes secondary. Now here's where things get even more interesting from an audience behavior standpoint. When names like Young Thug and Charleston White are involved, audiences already come in with preloaded opinions. That means people aren't just watching to understand, they're watching to confirm what they already believe. So if someone already sees Charleston White as controversial, they interpret his response through that lens. If someone already sees Akademiks as an amplifier of drama, they interpret his reaction as fuel rather than analysis. And if someone follows Young Thug closely, they start reading even indirect mentions as meaningful moves. This creates a situation where the same information produces completely different narratives depending on who is watching. And that's why these stories explode so quickly. Because it's not just about what was said, it's about how many ways it can be interpreted. Now, stepping back for a moment, there's something important to point out. In most viral situations like this, the internet tends to skip one key step: verification. Instead of waiting for a clear explanation or official confirmation, the conversation immediately jumps into reaction mode. And once reaction takes over, facts start to lose priority. That's why you see so many different versions of the same situation floating around at the same time. One post says one thing. Another post adds emotion to it. A third adds commentary. And suddenly, a simple reach-out narrative becomes a multi-layered debate. But underneath all of that noise, the structure of the situation is actually quite simple. A claim or report of contact surfaces. Charleston White responds in his usual outspoken style. Akademiks reacts and breaks it down. The internet multiplies interpretations. That's the cycle. And once you recognize that pattern, you start to see how predictable viral drama actually is. It's not random. It's a system. Now, what keeps this particular situation interesting is the personalities involved. Charleston White brings confrontation energy. Akademiks brings amplification and analysis energy. And Young Thug represents the silent center, the name that drives attention even when he's not the one speaking in real time. That combination is exactly why this topic didn't stay small. Because when you mix silence, reaction, and commentary, the internet fills in the gaps with imagination. And imagination spreads faster than facts ever do. So as this story continues to circulate, what you're really watching isn't just a response or a reaction chain. You're watching how modern online narratives are built piece by piece, clip by clip, opinion by opinion. And right there is where things shift again, because this isn't just about a message anymore. It's about timing. Because sources around the situation are now claiming that Young Thug's outreach didn't just happen randomly. It came at a moment where tension in the Atlanta rap scene is already extremely fragile. People close to the situation suggest that conversations behind the scenes have been building for weeks, even months, but nothing had gone public until now. And when you look at it closely, it raises a real question. Why now? Why would Young Thug choose this exact moment to reach out? And more importantly, what was said that nobody is ready to repeat publicly? Now this is where Charleston White comes back into the conversation, because he didn't just react, he escalated it. In his response, he questioned the entire idea of reconciliation, suggesting that some of these peace talks in rap culture don't actually solve anything, they just reset the cycle. He basically made it clear, in his view, when egos, street history, and fame collide, messages don't always mean peace. Sometimes they mean pressure. And that's why this situation is getting so much attention online. Because Akademiks jumped in too, and when Akademiks reacts, the internet listens differently. He didn't fully take sides, but he did. Something more interesting, he analyzed the chessboard. He pointed out how Lil Baby's name keeps getting pulled into every conversation involving Young Thug, even when Baby himself isn't directly speaking. And that creates a different type of tension. Because now fans are no longer just watching individual artists. They're watching alliances. They're watching silence. And they're watching every small reaction like it's a statement. At one point in his breakdown, Akademiks hinted that the real story isn't even what was said privately, it's what people think was said. And that's where misinformation, interpretation, and ego all collide at once. Because in hip-hop culture, especially in Atlanta's current scene, silence is never just silence. It gets decoded. It gets analyzed. It gets turned into narrative. Meanwhile, Charleston White doubled down on his stance, saying situations like this always look bigger online than they actually are, but they still carry real consequences. And that's the contradiction here. On one side, you have people saying it's not that deep. On the other side, you have millions of viewers treating every update like a breaking news alert. Now here's where it gets even more layered. Because fans started pulling old clips, old interviews, old lyrics, old live streams, trying to connect dots that may or may not even be connected. And suddenly, what started as a simple reach-out moment between Young Thug and Charleston White turned into a full-scale discussion about loyalty, respect, and influence in hip-hop. People began asking, was this reconciliation? Was this damage control? Or was this just misunderstood communication between two loud voices in completely different lanes? And nobody has a clean answer. But what's clear is this. Every single person involved is now being watched more closely than before. Even Akademiks, while reacting, acknowledged something important. In today's internet culture, one message is never just one message anymore. It becomes content. It becomes debate. It becomes ammunition for multiple narratives at once. And that's exactly what happened here. Charleston White's response kept the pressure on, framing the situation as something that reveals deeper issues in how the industry handles conflict publicly versus privately. While Akademiks' coverage made it clear that rap media itself is now part of the ecosystem driving these stories forward. And then comes Lil Baby's name again. Not because he spoke, but because he didn't. And in this space, not speaking sometimes says more than speaking ever could. Fans started dissecting whether silence means distance, strategy, or simply no involvement at all. But in the court of public opinion, all three can exist at the same time. So now the situation sits in a strange place. No official confirmation of drama. No confirmed resolution. Just reactions, interpretations, and escalating online discourse. And this is exactly why this story is spreading so fast. Because it's not one event. It's a chain reaction. One message led to a reaction. One reaction led to analysis. One analysis led to speculation. And now speculation is driving the entire narrative. At this point, even neutral observers are asking the same thing. Is this actually a moment of reconciliation in progress? Or just another example of how quickly hip-hop conversations spiral once the internet gets involved? And until something more concrete comes out publicly, that question is going to stay open. But one thing is already clear. Charleston White, Young Thug, Akademiks, and Lil Baby's names being in the same conversation guarantees one thing. The internet is not done with this story yet. At this point, the story is no longer just about a message that was sent or received. It has evolved into something much bigger, something the internet does every time names like Young Thug, Charleston White, Akademiks, and Lil Baby get pulled into the same frame. It becomes a reflection of the entire culture watching itself in real time. Because what started as a simple reach-out moment is now being treated like a symbolic event. Fans aren't just asking what was said anymore. They're asking what it means. And that's where the interpretations split. Some viewers believe Young Thug's outreach represents maturity, a sign that old tensions are being lowered behind the scenes, even if nothing is publicly confirmed. Others believe it's strategic, that in hip-hop, timing is never random, and every message carries weight depending on who receives it, when they receive it, and how it leaks. Then you have Charleston White's angle, which completely rejects the emotional framing altogether. In his view, this isn't reconciliation. It's performance. It's pressure. It's influence moving in silence while the internet reacts out loud. And that's where his commentary starts to resonate with a certain audience, because he's not reacting like a fan, he's reacting like someone. Questioning the entire system behind these narratives. Meanwhile, Akademiks takes a different lane. He doesn't dismiss the story, but he also doesn't fully inflate it. Instead, he zooms out. He starts connecting how every reaction becomes content, and how every piece of content becomes fuel for the next wave of discussion. In his breakdown, the real subject isn't even Young Thug or Charleston White. It's the ecosystem itself. The cycle of message, reaction, clip, interpretation, viral escalation. And once that cycle starts, there's no real way to control where it goes. especially when names like Lil Baby get added into the mix without even speaking. Because now silence becomes part of the narrative too. Fans begin to speculate. Is Lil Baby staying quiet intentionally? Is he distancing himself? Or is there simply nothing to respond to? But in internet culture, absence never stays neutral for long. It always gets assigned meaning. And that's exactly what happens here. Every lack of response becomes a talking point. Every old clip becomes evidence. Every gesture gets reinterpreted through the lens of, what does this mean for the bigger picture? And slowly, the original message gets buried under layers of interpretation. At some point, the conversation stops being about facts and starts becoming about perception. Charleston White leans into that contradiction heavily. He frames the entire situation as proof that online culture magnifies everything, turning private communication into public spectacle and public spectacle into ongoing narrative warfare. But Akademiks' coverage shows another layer. This isn't just internet exaggeration. It's also audience demand. People want access. They want updates. They want meaning behind every interaction. So when something small happens, it doesn't stay small for long. It expands. It evolves. It mutates into something far bigger than the original moment. And that's exactly what we're seeing here. Because at no point has there been a clear confirmation of conflict escalating in real life. Yet online, the story feels massive. That gap between reality and perception is where modern hip-hop discourse lives now. And it's why every reaction matters. Because once a narrative starts trending, even silence becomes participation. Even neutrality gets interpreted. Even waiting becomes strategy. So, where does that leave this situation? Right now, it sits in a suspended state. No official resolution. No confirmed fallout. No public clarification beyond reactions and commentary. Just layered interpretations floating across platforms, each one feeding the next. And maybe that's the real takeaway here. Not whether Young Thug's message meant peace or pressure. Not whether Charleston White's response was critique or escalation. Not whether Akademiks is analyzing or amplifying. But the fact that in today's digital culture, stories don't need closure to stay alive. They just need engagement. And this one has plenty of it. Because as long as there are reactions, there will be theories. As long as there are theories, there will be breakdowns. And as long as there are breakdowns, the internet will keep this conversation going far beyond the original moment that started it all. So the final question isn't who said what. It's this. In a world where every message becomes content, can any conversation ever stay private again? And just like that, the line between real life and internet speculation gets thinner again. Because what you just watched isn't just another rap headline. It's a perfect example of how fast narratives explode, how quickly silence gets misread, and how every reaction becomes part of a much bigger story online. But now I want to hear from you. Do you think Young Thug's outreach was genuine peace, or just another misunderstood moment blown out by the internet? And Charleston White's reaction, is he exposing the truth behind the industry, or just adding fuel to an already viral fire? And where does Akademiks stand in all of this? Reporter, commentator, or part of the story itself? Drop your thoughts in the comments, because this is one of those situations where every perspective changes the angle. If you enjoyed this breakdown, make sure you hit that like button. It helps push these stories to more people who follow the culture closely. And if you're new here, subscribe and turn on notifications, because you already know the next update in this situation could drop at any moment, and you don't want to miss how it unfolds. We break it down real, we break it down fast, and we keep it unfiltered. See you in the next one.